Alright, so YCS Anaheim just took place, and not only was it the first YCS with crossover breakers being legal, it was actually, and more importantly, the first YCS at which the ban list was announced at the very end of the tournament. So if y'all are tuning in to this video right now, first of all, please make sure to like it if you enjoy it, but you have already seen the ban list. So let me know your thoughts in the comments and what you think the next format is gonna be looking like. And right now, let's focus on the actual event that took place and talk about the impact of crossover breakers, YCS, Malice, and so forth. So let's hop into the video, and again, make sure to share your thoughts in the comments, and let's go ahead and get started with top 32 breakdown. So let's talk about the new decks. Obviously, crossover breakers introduced YCS and Malice, and we all expected both of those to have some kind of impact. But I believe some people, myself included, were quite surprised by two things. Mainly, Malice being a little more represented than I thought is going to be, and that's due to the fact that I thought Malice might be a kind of a tough deck to learn, especially compared to YCS, so more players might gravitate towards YCS, and also Lancia being a huge problem for Malice. But mainly, yeah, it was just the fact that the combos are kind of tough, and the deck is not that easy to pilot. I would say it's quite hard to master. The other deck I want to talk about is actually going to be YCS Fiendsmith, which ended up being a little surprising to me because we all thought YCS was going to do well, and if you don't know much about the deck, it's basically just a toolbox XYZ deck with rank 4 Xyz monsters. That's just kind of like a mixture of Zoo and Sprite. It's just a toolbox deck with desires and non-engine. That's pretty much the gist of it. So we all thought it's gonna do well because the results spoke for themselves in the OCG. But over here, people started pairing YCS together with Fiendsmith as well, which is actually a really cool approach. Basically making it so Fiendsmith kind of baits some of the stuff, or just is there for you to deal with problematic things. Since Fiendsmith effect, send and equip, send the monster, that's actually a really good tool of pushing into a board. Not to mention that the Fiendsmith engine by itself is very tough to hand trap because Lacrima itself is just, it's so good. Like, Lacrima is such a good card. And yeah, it's just a cool engine to pair with YCS. And going back to Malice, this deck actually played Kashtira for the most part because you're kind of lacking in bodies, and also Malice seems to be more of a board breaker deck because YCS is just much better at a hand trap approach. Therefore, if you want to go for hand traps, you should probably play YCS, and Malice is much better at incorporating the likes of Kashtira cards, Eclipse, Ultimate Slayer. You can do a lot of different things with this deck, but I don't think it's, I don't think the hand trap approach is the way to go. So that's it for both of those decks. And just very quickly, what Malice is, if you've noticed, of course, from the stream, it is a Cyberse Link pile, which is very different from YCS. And also it's tougher to pilot because it is a combo deck where there are a lot of different lines you can do with 1-card combos, 2-card combos, and it's just really going to depend on how your opponent disrupts you. So if you're prepared to play around many hand traps, you're going to do well with Malice. You're going to have to think of different lines, how to beat every single hand trap almost, including Nibiru, which is kind of an annoying hand trap to deal with. You still can play through it, but it's going to depend because the hand trap count right now is still fairly high, so pairing hand traps together against your deck is super impactful. Another card I also want to mention before we talk about some other decks is D-Barrier, which is super good against YCS. But YCS is still really, really strong if you don't face D-Barrier, or if you have Crossout for it, which is a very important card for this strategy, then you're fine. And also in YCS mirror matches, Crossout is going to come in handy. What you have to do in YCS mirror matches, though, is two things. Number one, winning the die roll is really important, actually, because you want to go first game 3, so your opponent doesn't go first game 3 and de-barrier you. Or if you don't win the die roll, you're just going to have to win game 1 for the same reason. So with that, let's talk about some other decks. Fiendsmith. It's still a really good choice for this event because people had some time to really test it out, especially the people that were playing it before YCS Bologna. But after Bologna, it just became much more popular. And from what I've been hearing, literally every single locals is just run over by Fiendsmith Kashtira. Just an extremely solid deck. The main issue though is the Malice matchup, actually, because you kind of struggle into it. Malice can grind. It's got insane follow-up. And even though you can grind as well, I think it's going to be a little tough to go up against it. Also, the yugioh matchup, I wouldn't say is that great. I don't think you're that favored, actually. But yeah, speaking of yugioh, you already know I love yugioh, but like the main issue is Fuvalos. And yeah, that's pretty much it, actually. Like people just... It's very tough for us yugioh players to build this deck for right now. Because before, Fuvalos was an issue, but that's pretty much it. You just kind of have to deal with it. And it was either the hand trap approach, which I think was better, or the board breaker approach with Kashtira, which is fine. But right now, there are a couple other issues. YCS is just, it's tough to go up against it because if your hand trap is good enough, or if you have a combination of hand trap talents or something like that, you're fine. However, if you only have hand traps, you're just gonna kind of hand loop yourself, and that's not ideal. So the main issue right now, I would say, is deck building for yugioh and Charmies again. And also Tempai, some of the earlier rounds charts actually showed Tempai at much less representation. The deck fell off significantly due to a couple things. YCS matchup is not good. And also the second reason being that Shifter is no longer such an edge because Malice can play it and because YCS doesn't really struggle against it. Meaning you don't have that insane card anymore that's going to carry you in most of the matchups unless you face the likes of yugioh and fire decks, but it's not going to be the case as much anymore, pretty much. So that's the thing with Tempai. Fire decks, they just fell off. Like when I say fell off, I mean fell off. It's not good. The go-to hand trap deck right now is just gonna be YCS, and it is much more resilient, plays through Shifter more easily, and just has a lot more going for it than fire decks right now. So this result doesn't really surprise me. The only little surprise, again, were Malice and the Fiendsmith YCS variant, which I wasn't really expecting. So with that, let's move further on in Top Cut. We did talk about most of the decks already, so let's talk about the eventual winner. I mean, of course it was YCS. So, like, I pretty much said all I wanted to say about this deck, but I guess to really drive home the point I wanted to make is just the fact that YCS is really, really strong. You have to be skilled in the mirror match, but there are a couple things that are kind of out of your control, which is not ideal. However, it is a little more... how to put it, like just easier to learn than Malice, and also a little easier to pilot, I would say. So more people are going to gravitate towards it. It can carry you a tiny bit better than Malice. I feel like with Malice, it's always going to be an uphill battle because you just have to play perfectly. And you do have to do that with YCS as well. You do have to think about your follow-up and all of that. But still, I think YCS just has a little more going for it right now. And it's also going to receive some amazing support, which is actually going to make Lancia searchable, which is insane. But Malice is receiving some great support somewhere in the beginning/middle of the year next year, so that's also fine. But all the other decks that managed to make it as far in Top Cut as they did, I would say it just makes a lot of sense. Some of the more interesting things, I guess, in the entire tournament would be Voiceless Voice, for example, which actually has a good matchup against Fiendsmith Kashtira, as well as some of these top decks, because it just grinds quite well and it doesn't really lose to Charmies, which is nice. But other than that, most of the decks were quite expected. One of the outliers was Flunder being played in like round 10 or something, which, that was just funny, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much what the event looked like. And again, I think it was quite expected. And I do think the new meta is just going to be completely insane, but also really, really cool. So to round the video off, I just wanted to talk about a couple things. Number one, the stream was having its problems. We all saw that. And it was not ideal. It does not make for a great viewing experience. However, I do think they're trying to step things up with each stream. I did like the little BANLIST kit. I'm always like, I do have a soft spot for like cringy skits and dad jokes and stuff like that. Like I'm just, yeah, it got me. I did like it. But yeah, just overall, the stream was having issues, but there's not that much they can do about it, I guess. And something else I really liked, if you saw, like it was all over Twitter, but basically this guy had like a board with the who's who stuff, like you can see it on the screen, but basically he just put the ritual beast monsters on there to take note of like how many of them were special summoned during that turn and which were used already. And I thought this was one of the best ideas, and it doesn't seem to be against policy in any way. And I do think the judges didn't have a problem with it. So that's something I found really cool. And also, you know, it's the sushi guy, the sous chef guy, the chef guy. I just love seeing stuff like that at events. It cracks me up so much. And yeah, like this entire event it was extremely fun to watch and to experience via stream. And I am sure it was even better in person. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for this video, for this event. I think it was a great end to a format / start of a new format. So again, share all of your thoughts and predictions for the future. And if you like the video, of course, make sure to like it. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.